You're listening to the Nonprofit State of Minds podcast, an Angel Oak Creative production.
Hey everybody, David Chatham here with Angel Oak Creative. Welcome to the latest episode of our Nonprofit State of Minds podcast, where we kind of pick the brains of nonprofit leaders and just get some great insights. We have been doing this. We're going into our fourth season this year and have had some great conversations. And today is not going to be an exception by any means. We've got Brian Reid, Regional President of Town Bank. Hey Brian, how are you?
David, great to see you. Hopefully your weather where you are is a little warmer than where we are here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
It is exactly the same. We are cold.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. People may wonder, why do we have a bank president on here talking about nonprofits? And one is it's a privilege because Brian and Town Bank are such great contributors to our sector in this region. We have a great relationship with Town Bank as well as many of our clients, and they contribute so greatly. So that's why Brian's going to bring some insights from a financial perspective today, also of what nonprofits need to be aware of in 2026 maybe and beyond, and then just some practical kind of things of what nonprofits can look at. So thank you for being willing to share your experience there, Brian.
David, great to be with you. Town Bank is honored to serve here in the Triangle market and beyond, headquartered in Suffolk. We're about a $22 billion bank, been around 26 plus years. I've been with the bank 25 years, which that's hard to believe, 36 years in banking. I know.
Well, you started at 12.
I wish that math worked. That would be great. Been in my current role now going on 14 years, which that's hard to believe.
Wow.
And we started the bank with the whole focus of being a community asset. And part of that community asset is serving nonprofits and all they do to help our community be better. And because of that, here locally, we serve over 400 nonprofits, and on our footprint, over 2,000 nonprofits. So it is really a focus of how we can serve and give back all in the same breath. So
no, that's one of the reasons we don't hesitate to let people know about you guys. We're people talk about the challenges of banking relationships, and we'll get into that conversation later. But having a community bank that's invested in the community and seeing it thrive, I think is just such a great asset, to use the word you used. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you land in the glamorous world of banking?
Oh, that's a funny but not that exciting story. So when I graduated from the Ohio State University in 1990, the economy was in a challenging place. I always thought I was going to be a trader on Wall Street. Actually, really didn't know what that meant, but it sounded pretty cool. And I had an uncle that was successful on Wall Street. Ended up choosing National City Bank, which at the time was the seventh largest bank in the country. Sadly, no longer exists. They were bought by PNC in the Great Recession. They had an amazing management training program, which also paid for my MBA at Case Western University, and really gravitated towards commercial relationships. And then at the time, we were, my wife and I, with two children in Cleveland, Ohio, said there's got to be a warmer, better place to be. Did a job search and ended up down here in North Carolina in the Raleigh area, now approaching 29 years ago. So banking has been a part of my life now for almost 36 years. I find it very rewarding in helping folks, both in the commercial side, the nonprofit side, individual side, and have built great lifelong friends and relationships that I truly value. So it's been a very rewarding career.
Wow. Well, it's quite a journey
and 5 adult children and 1 grandchildren later, here we are.
Oh, so, gosh.
Yeah, time flies.
Oh, you were busy. Yeah, you and your wife were busy. Definitely. It sounds like it. Well, talk a little bit about Town Bank. You mentioned your commitment to nonprofits, the number of nonprofits you serve, but dig a little deeper into your thinking, your philosophy as a bank about participating in the nonprofit sector, because you're probably not going to. I would guess that the bank is not getting rich off of nonprofits, right? I mean,
Well,
I can't imagine.
wonderful questions. And I think if a bank were to go into it saying, hey, this is a wildly successful, you make a lot of money, I don't know if that would be the right reason why you go into it. Truthfully. And I'm not saying that from it's not a bad business sector
No,
for
right.
sure. I will say both because I was part of a bank called Paragon Bank,
Yeah.
and we were bought by Town Bank 8 years ago. The beautiful thing is the founder of Town Bank, Bob Aston, and the founder of Paragon, Bob Hatley, the meeting of the Bobs, both had a passion for serving
Mm.
and had so from a very early professional age. And because of that, that influenced how we looked at nonprofits. We saw them truly as part of our network and part of our fabric. And because of that, Bob Aston with Town Bank, he said, we're going to put 3% of our profits into our foundation and give it away every year. Now that's
Wow.
been 125 million plus dollars over a 25 plus year span. Bob Hatley,
Wow.
same thing. He said, hey, we want to focus on nonprofits. So we started the beginning. So it's really been in our DNA because of our founders of why we focused, and that has permeated into each one of us. Now we have over 3,000 employees who are civically engaged or engaged in many of our nonprofits over that 2,000 that we call our members. So it's been a blessing, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you serve them and you get significant numbers, it does turn into real business, which is kind
Yeah.
of the byproduct,
Yeah.
of focusing on something that helps make our community a better place to live, work, and play. So.
Well, it's definitely a win-win, right? And the feedback I get from Town Bank customers and the fact that you all go out of your way, I think if I recall, you have things like you have a courier service, if I understand, that goes and picks up receipts, basically, cash from or checks and all, I should say, from nonprofits at no cost, right? And I think you hire veterans to do that, if I understand correctly.
That is correct. Yeah. So that's something that's been in place a long, long time. We believe wholeheartedly, despite all the technology in the world, that it all stems from the personal relationship that you have. Right. So
Yeah.
that's where it stems. Now, we all need to have our phone, be able to look at our balances and move money and maybe even deposit a check with that. But at the end of the day, it's the human being. So same thing with our courier system. We have our folks that go out there, they learn and understand their relationship. They get to know them personally. They'll bring them their favorite candy if they like. If they have a dog, they'll bring a dog treat for the dog. So it's just building that
That's
connectivity.
neat.
Many of our members look forward to our couriers coming out because it's a very pleasant, enjoyable experience. They hand them their deposit bag. We come back, make the deposit, and when they return, they bring the receipt. So again, just I'll say a fun, enjoyable, and successful transaction that people enjoy. So yeah, making something that could be pretty mundane, making it a little bit more meaningful.
Well, it's relational and not transactional, right? I mean, that I think that to me is that's kind of how Angel Oak operates too. We don't want to be a vendor. We want to be a partner in everything that we do. So,
Right.
well,
Couldn't echo that better.
yeah, thank you. Let's move into the exciting world of finance here when it comes to nonprofits. I think folks may be tuning in to really kind of get a sense of, gosh, what in the world is going on right now, right? I mean, we've got some really, we were talking before the interview here. I've been on two calls already this week, and it's only Wednesday, and that people have lost almost half of their funding from losing federal and state grants, and they're scrambling. How do they plan? How are they able not just to be sustainable, but in some cases survive, right? So talk a little bit about the landscape. What's going on today? What are you all seeing?
Great question. I just left Raleigh Chamber of Commerce Executive Board meeting, and we kind of went around the room in our different professions and shared. And, the sad part is there was a lot of dialogue around our nonprofits because we value them so much. And the ones that had, I'll say a significant, much that you alluded to, federal component to their funding are very challenged right now. And even some that had some state fundings because there's been cutbacks in North Carolina in that also. The challenge is you pray that they have the resources, the capital to kind of, we'll say, pivot. Don't like that word a lot, but pivot. And the timeline around that pivot and how they can sustain and change that funding source and that funding model a lot of times is not easy. And sadly, we do know two of our nonprofits here in the Triangle that will not be making it through the end of this year. They're kind of in a wind down phase right now. And that's very
Wow.
sad because
Yeah.
they've been impacting our community in such a positive way in their different niches, and they're going to go away, and that's unfortunate. So we're spending a good bit of time sitting down with the different board members and the executives of these and helping them think through their financial options. The challenge is, if you can't get a new model or an enhanced or adjusted model from that, sometimes it's like, hey, go to the bank and they can kind of give you money. Well, unfortunately, the bank wants to give you money for growth reasons. They want to give you money for development reasons because they see how that's going to impact and grow, and the funding will fund it. You don't want to fund, I'll say, losses. That's just not. Short-term funding's great if you're like, hey, here's the little bridge we have. Those fundings will get us from this point to this point, and then we've got the funding sources on a continuing basis.
Right.
So a lot of times there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of, you don't really want your bank to fund losses, because at least losses that don't have a turnaround to them, or else it's just going to be an unfortunate situation in the future, maybe near future. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It is. It's frustrating and sad and all of those things to be in the situation that we're in. I
For sure.
think that brings me to the thought of, what role does the bank play, or a bank play, in helping nonprofits make decisions about being in a position where they're more sustainable, they're more stable? What role can they or should they play in that?
Well, nonprofits aren't completely dissimilar to just operating businesses, right? You think
Yeah.
of ones that make widgets or services. One of the early things that banks look at is their diversification of revenue, right? So
Mm,
some companies, if they had 80% of the revenue was coming from, a great name, that seems kind of great. But if that great name company decides, hey, we're going to go with a different vendor, and you've kind of scaled to that specific, company, you put yourself in a vulnerable situation. Same thing with nonprofits, right? The more diverse the revenue streams, the more successful that they can weather challenges. And what we're going through right now is a perfect example of that. So, and nonprofits have known that for a long time. But the challenge is, once you get on it, sometimes it's hard to get off that merry-go-round, right? Because
yeah.
you only have so many resources, and if those resources are used, in this case, as an example, communicating with the federal government to make sure those dollars fund, you're not cultivating those other revenue sources. Again, it's just a tough one, right? Because there's only,
Yeah.
again, a lot of these nonprofits run very lean, and just can't take their eye off that ball. Unfortunately, when the ball gets taken away, they're forced to start looking at those different opportunities and
Yeah.
revenue
Are you
sources.
getting clients coming to you and asking you about those kinds of things? Maybe they're either impacted currently, or they're fearing that impact. Are they coming to you and asking you, how do we get in a better position?
All the above, and what else? Yeah, all the above. I sit on about 8 different nonprofit boards here locally, so
Wow.
I get that. And most of our bankers sit on anywhere between 1 and 5. So, and that's part of, again, our giving back to the community. So a lot of them are getting those questions and guidance and stuff. So, it's now not as new as it was in 2025. So
Yeah.
people are building those toolboxes to kind of shift. What I will say is, we are also getting asked as a bank to continue to support, and sometimes at a higher level, to help augment those gaps that were created from the funding sources drying up or going away. So, and I think that's the case for many of the different nonprofits. Are saying, okay, if we're not going to get it from different governmental sources, we've got to get it from the community. So that's going to be corporations that are generous, and individuals that are generous, foundations that are generous, to see if we can kind of backfill. As you would guess, those take some time, because you got to build that relationship. You got to kind of explain your case. You can help those folks understand that this is a true investment, and the return will be a beneficial result to our community. So again, we're fielding those. I'm personally fielding those. Got several in my inbox right now. And we get a lot of the asks are for good reasons. Again, they're all good reasons, but
Sure.
reasons that fit well, i.e., we are doing a capital campaign to build a building, and this building is going to then serve this many people, and this is the impact of us serving those people. So those are wonderful ones. The challenging ones and again, we hold different seminars around this topic, are for just good old working capital, day in and day out. And that's the challenging part there, because not as many organizations, they'll support it, but it won't be at the level that you typically see for capital campaigns. So
yeah. Well, talk about that. Talk about capital in the sense of having access to funds. Yeah, I've been on a few boards and most and work. Angel Oak only works with nonprofits, so we see it every day. Most nonprofits don't operate with any sort of reserve, right? They don't operate with any sort of safety net within the funding. That's just doesn't seem to be a a common practice, I think. I guess thinking about it from that perspective, is there a strategy? Is there a way that folks can start to build towards that? Well, I mean, I guess it's just start somewhere, right? But I'm sure there's something more insightful that you could say to that.
well, kind of you to say that. I probably get that asked that question more than any question. What should
Oh,
the
really?
returns be of a nonprofit? And each nonprofit has its own unique structure, and because of that, there is not one cookie cutter answer. What I will say is the pandemic really gave us a good dry
Hmm.
run into what those needs look like. Meaning,
Yeah.
what things can we skinny down, right? What things can we either cut out, and based on that, what's our run rate then? So what I will say is I would say on average or typically you'd love to see nonprofits have at least 6 months of
Mm.
working capital to sustain them. Again, that's also taking into account the skinny down pieces, right? What things can we kind of skinny down to allow us to make sure we can sustain in a tough situation? Again, the pandemic gave us a great dry run, or more than a dry run on that, and how we can, then PPP kind of backfilled. So it wasn't completely necessary for most entities. So I'll say, generally 6 months. Sometimes it's more depending on how heavy their capital structure is, i.e., you're in an expensive office building that you've got a lease on, and you're going to pay that whether you're going through a challenging time or not, right?
Right.
Whereas others could be, hey, we had outsourced labor and other things that we don't have to do. So those are the skinny down pieces, and here's the core that we'll run with. So those are the different things you can kind of look at to kind of figure out what's the right size for you.
And then, debt's not a common word that most nonprofits kind of lean into, but there there's I would assume, like any finance strategy, there's a role for debt in the nonprofit sector. Talk about that a little bit. When is it a good move for a nonprofit to consider taking on some debt and using it as an investment?
Well, yeah, thank you. I would say, obviously, if there's a growth, which we have funded numerous building campaigns, so they come to us and they'll say, hey, we're starting the campaign. We're kind of in the quiet phase. Here's the dollars we've raised from the people we've raised. Here's the total amount. Here's what our plan is to secure enough to make sure that the loan can be repaid. Those are wonderful ones. And we've done lots and lots of those,
Yeah.
But honestly, I could think of one, Safe Child.
Oh,
They
yeah.
did such a beautiful job funding that they paid us off like 2.5 years later, which is a great thing. We celebrated
Wow.
right here in the office, a little champagne, paid off the loan. Exciting for that nonprofit. Those are awesome. The other ones are lines of credit that make sense because of timing differences, right?
Mm.
I.e., we only get our slug of cash once a year, 2 times a year, yet we have all these expenses going on daily, weekly, monthly. But we know that this dollars will come, and that's a great place for a line of credit to fund that timing difference. So those are really two great examples. Most nonprofits, the boards will say, hey, let's get a line of credit to make sure in case we have a challenge. And that's not a bad way to think about it, but you got to make sure that that challenge is not one that is going to severely impact the nonprofit to a point where they may not be surviving, because then in that situation, it's no fun for the nonprofit, not a lot from the bank. So again, funding gaps, and for capital campaigns, when you can see how the repayment from different pledges and other things is going to repay the loan, are really, really good reasons why you go into debt.
When should capital campaign might be kind of obvious, but for that line of credit, when should that conversation happen? How does that, is there a trigger for that? Is there a certain type or size or, what does that look like?
Yeah, great question. I would say that all nonprofits should have that conversation with their bankers,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
Again, it's never a bad conversation. The things that the bank always look at, it's really for the most part, how do we get paid? So you look at the
Yeah.
entity's cash flow. Does it look like the cash flow is sufficient to repay, in this case, maybe a line of credit? What do those different funding sources look like? What's their concentrations? So you look at that repayment source ability. You will typically, ideally, but not always, look to have some sort of collateral position. So for
Yeah.
nonprofits, they may not own the building, but they may have an investment portfolio that could be a collateral position, or they have receivables coming from donors or from government or other that could be part of that collateral pool that in essence is kind of like a borrowing base, if you will, to fund and cover the line of credit, if you will. So.
Well, thank you. All of that's, yeah, way above my pay grade in terms of being able to give any sort of advice there. So, when an organization is looking for a bank, what are those 3 to 4 things that they should look for in a bank that is, maybe nonprofit sector friendly or, able to serve them well? What are those, 3 or 4 traits that, they should look at when they're making a decision about who they're going to bank with?
Well, and again, much like the question we asked before, as far as what should nonprofits have as a reserve, everybody values things differently.
Yeah.
For me, I value interaction. I value relationships. I value the fact that I could text David and David and I could get to a resolve. So for folks that value a personal relationship with a bank, then Town would be a great fit for them. And there are banks out there that are very technology driven. They have 800 numbers and people are served because that's what they're looking for. So really look for your own style, your own personality, your own desire. So if you want to walk into a bank and everybody treats you like Norm on Cheers, you're going to love Town Bank. I mean, again, because that's the way we want you to feel every time you
Right.
have interaction, whether it's our courier bringing out a candy and a dog treat for your dog and making the experience great, whether it's you walking into one of our offices. So it's important to align your values, your things that make you happy with your relationship. And with that, you have a connection with a human being that you sit down, you share your story, the banker asks you questions about goals, objectives, and really tailor makes that relationship to you and hand you a business card that has their cell phone number on it, their email, and their team email. So communication is very broad and very seamless. So you can be taken care of the way you want to be taken care of. So it's really important. Again, we've been on calls and folks will sit there and talk about technology and talk about a lot of things that we have, but their focus isn't on the human interaction. And I
Yeah.
respect that because everybody has a different way of wanting to bank. But for us, it's someone that values a personal relationship and having that connectivity, especially when you need it, whether it be PPP, whether it be, sadly, you
Mhm.
were compromised by a fraudster and you need
Oh,
help
yeah.
on protecting yourself. Sadly, we get that call more than we would all love for it to happen. And I preach the choir of scaring everybody out there and not trusting emails and
Right.
other things. And if you have a family member that sounds like a family member in a difficult situation, call them back on a phone that because sadly with AI, we have literally had members be scammed because of a family member's voice was basically copied
Wow.
by AI. So yeah, it's a scary world out there, and I try to scare people as much as possible so to protect them all in the same breath.
It's
So
a healthy fear.
yeah,
So that's
exactly.
it. And now talking about relationships, I got to give a shout out to Carol Holland. Carol is one of Town Bank's, I'm drawing a blank on her title now, but one of your representatives. She does an amazing job, handles a lot of, if not all of your nonprofit work here in the area. And just a great ally in all of the
Well,
work. So we're
thank you
grateful
for
for
the shout
Carol.
on. Yeah, shout out to Carol. She's an amazing human being. I hate that she's had to suffer with working with me for over 18 years. She heads up our nonprofit focus and effort for the Triangle. So she's the one that's serving over 400 of the nonprofits here. Her
Wow.
and I together I think from the end of August to the end of November, had 48 different events we went to with our
Oh my
nonprofits,
gosh.
which was awesome and a blessing to see the work that they do. And that's another example. Look for a bank that has, I'll say, a heavy focus on what you're doing, right? So again,
Yeah.
in our case, Carol Holland and her team, serve that over 400 nonprofits, which is amazing and awesome.
Yeah.
If the institution you're talking with doesn't have that same commitment and focus, it may not be the best institution. I'm not saying it's a bad one, but it may not be
Right.
the best fit. Carol offers up our training rooms and all of our locations for nonprofits to come in and have board meetings or whatever they need, because a lot of times they don't have that type of space to work with.
Yeah.
In addition to many other things that we do specific to our nonprofits. So look for that alignment. I think is important. Whether
Well,
it's
we're
nonprofits,
blessed.
or other.
We're blessed to be able to do a few of those seminars in those training rooms as well. We've got one coming up in March, so looking forward to continuing that relationship. And full disclosure, I am a personal bank. I have a personal relationship with Town Bank, so you all helped me with some work that I needed to get done, and did a great job with that. And then Angel Oak also does some banking with Town Bank, so make sure that we provide that full disclosure to folks listening. So a little bit of bias built into this conversation, but
Well, thank
I'm
you
not
for letting us serve you. We're on.
I'm not ashamed of that. Let's talk about what we can expect the rest of this year, or maybe what people should be focusing on going forward. Um, you know, it seemed like the philanthropic trends last year were kind of all over the place. That some sectors did really well, if I understand correctly. Others were challenged. I think, none of them were really surprising, I guess. I mean, I think the ones that focused on kind of the human services side seemed to stay pretty solid, or increase a little bit. The ones maybe a little what might be considered softer, like the arts and some other things, were a little challenged as well. What are you all talking to your nonprofits about for this, these next 12 months, 11 months left of this year? And kind of what are some things that people can be proactive about?
I think we have a little bit more of the same compared to 2025. I think
Mm.
waters will continue to be choppy.
That's
Uh,
not what we wanted to hear, Brian.
I know. I wish it weren't the case. I think I heard in the Raleigh Chamber Board meeting this morning that we're the only state that does not have a past state budget. That's
Oh
not
boy.
not something we should brag about, because there are a good number of nonprofits that have dollars that have historically been allocated in that budget,
Mhm.
which with it not being passed, they're sitting in limbo. So
Yeah.
that's difficult. I think the most important thing for them is continue to look at that revenue model and how they can continue to enhance and diversify that, and
Mhm.
what sources they need to communicate and build relationships with in order to be successful in doing that. I think those are the most important things. Obviously, for those who are being challenged and squeezed, look at the skinny down stuff. What things can we continue to do to be more efficient, yet still be impactful in our mission that we have? Um, and again, try to pick a good financial partner that you're with that can help you see things outside of your walls that maybe could benefit you. Because again, we're blessed to see a lot of different nonprofits. We're blessed to see a lot of different industries, and we have a lot of relationships, which means if you're trying to pivot to more corporate, we can help with introductions, right? So
Mhm.
we often say, hey, what's your hit list as far as your donors, as far as
Yeah.
corporate or individual? In fact, we did that with one just recently, and we're helping open in a door. So that's part of what
Nice.
we enjoy doing, is helping these great nonprofits be successful by spreading the word to other folks that want to support nonprofits in our community. So.
Oh, that's a great benefit of being engaged with a local bank too, I think, is having those relationships. Um, so out of all of those, let's talk about kind of what is one takeaway? What is one thing that we really want to make sure people heard in this conversation today, if we had to pinpoint that?
I think it's something that we've all been through at some point. This one seems a little bit, I'll say, more severe, right?
Yeah.
Just because of how quickly and how dramatic some of these cuts have happened, which unfortunately then forces us to be more severe and dramatic in our steps we need to take to make sure we're successful. So continuing to look at your funding sources is, I think, the most important, right? And how we diversify those on a
Mm,
go forward basis. evaluate what your focus is. Sometimes when money's flowing, your scope kind of creeps. And I'm not saying that's a bad creep, but you may need to get back to the roots of what was the origin of your organization. I will say also there is probably more talk right now than there's ever been in multiple nonprofits coming together in some mergers. I've seen a few here over the last year.
Yeah.
And that's where compromise comes in, because obviously a lot of nonprofits are very proud, and they should be, of their initial mission. And sometimes it takes a little compromise to say, hey, we will be better and stronger if we merge with maybe one or two different groups and continue forward.
No, that's great advice.
Yeah, you try, and that's tough. There's a lot of emotion around that, because again, many times there's still founders involved and others, and those are difficult conversations, but I think they're important ones. And then just the continuation of fiscal responsibility, right? So looking at those budgets, looking at what's critical, making sure the mission goes forward that aligns with the revenue diversification, and building those relationships to hopefully sustain that nonprofit in perpetuity. So those are, and I would say it's never a bad thing if you don't have a banker on your board to have one, because again, they'll bring perspectives to that meeting that's just beyond that nonprofit. So that's never a bad thing.
So are you offering up your services, Brian?
I'll say with currently sitting on 8 and trying to, and everybody wants to have a meeting either on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So it starts getting a little tight. I wish I could, but we do have a few bankers here in the bank at Town Bank that would probably welcome another 1 or 2 opportunities. So feel free to reach out to me and we can try to connect you.
No, that's awesome. Speaking of that, how can people learn more about Town Bank and, maybe find out about how you work with nonprofits?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, Townbank, TOWNEBANK.com, www is a great way to kind of learn on a macro level. I will say here locally, you can reach out to me, 919-534-7436. Happy to talk with anybody that needs some thoughts, guidance, and then you can just Google, and it'll all pop up anyway in today's world. Google that, and you can find out. But we're very engaged in the community, and we'll be out and about. So if you don't see myself or one of our bankers somewhere, we must be sick, because we're usually at about every event.
I can vouch for that, definitely. Well, Brian, thank you for your time today. Thank you for insights. Thank you for all that Town Bank does to support our nonprofit sector. You definitely make us better, and we're so grateful for that. Encourage people to check out Town Bank, and also just banking in general. What role does that play in your nonprofit, right? That is it a part of your strategy to think about that? I've heard stories of Town Bank and others being able to save nonprofits thousands and thousands of dollars just looking at their particular situation and seeing, here's some things that we can change with fees, right? Here's some things that we can change with tax situations. So it's an invaluable resource that I think not enough people take advantage of. So I encourage people to really get to know banking a little more deeply and as it relates to their organization. So.
Great words, David. It's been a joy spending time with you today. Always here if I can help in any way. You know that.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening today. Obviously, if you found this particular podcast episode, you found our Nonprofit State of Minds podcast. Love to have you listen to some more of our episodes. We've got some great ones around a variety of topics and with some really smart people like Brian. So we appreciate that. And if you want to learn more about Angel Oak, angeloakcreative.com. You can reach out to me at david@angeloakcreative.com. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day, and look forward to seeing you down the road.